to discuss an estimation that listed construction groups Stefanutti and Raubex are at risk of some damage claims. Is Stephen Meintjes, head of research at Imara S.P. Reid. You guys do really good work there, Steve, but primarily because you look at the whole continent. I mean, you got people all over the continent. With the Competition Commission fines that were levied on construction companies, and now the possibility that there could be some kind of a knock-on effect. Is this something that companies around the continent have been considering, or is it more a localized thing?
I think it's very much more a localized thing, although obviously what happened here could be noticed by other authorities elsewhere and looked into, but we haven't heard anything.
Because you'd think the profit margins that South African companies make outside of the borders of this country are so substantially higher than what they are in South Africa that there must be some kind of funny business happening.
Well,
there could be.
There could be. We don't know of any. We incidentally have a separate team focusing on other Africa, and so we wouldn't know the detail of that. But suffice it to say that the South African companies, many of them have been elsewhere in Africa for decades, and they've paid their school fees. They know the way around. There is a lot of competition. So although margins are better, they're not exorbitant. Yeah.
All right. So you decided to have a look at two stocks in particular, Stefanutti stocks and Raubex. Why did you pick those two?
Well, Stefanutti simply because it was by far the largest relative to its size of all the fines imposed.
Okay. So it's at most at risk if there are civil claims.
Well, that's the way we reasoned. They paid over 300 million to the Competition Commission, or as a result of that whole process. And this, funnily enough, was the same as three of the big four, Marion Roberts of Eng.
Were they naughtier? Is that the reason?
Relative to size, it would appear they were. The number of cases relative to size was quite high. They had about 15. The big ones, Wilson Bailey Home, about 21 cases. This is now projects that were rigged projects that were declared.
Which side did it come from? The stock side or the Stefanutti side? Remember, there was a merger.
I think they're pretty well merged. We didn't pick up the difference.
Stefanutti had a really good reputation before the merger, and stocks perhaps less so.
Yes, that's going back a while. I think it's very much.
But these fines were also going back a while. They're back to 2007 and before.
Yes.
So it would be interesting to see which. Did Stefanutti buy themselves a lemon when they did that deal? Interesting.
Wow. Yes, we didn't go into that detail.
What's the exposure though? What could? Well, let's go back now. If you were the person who paid for the particular construction project and Stefanutti Stocks has admitted to the Competition Commission that it did something wrong, presumably, just logic suggests that you might have a case against them.
You might well have a case. In some cases that we've seen, the companies concerned did admit to collusive practice. So that in our calculations we assumed an inflated margin of say 1.5%, and so we did some sums along those lines and came to a number which for Stefanutti Stocks worked out at with interest factor, because as you say, going back a long time, the interest factor is quite significant. I think we actually came out at a possible civil claims liability of about 163, and with interest that added up to again around about 300 million.
Could it wipe out another year's profits?
It pretty well would, but if you regard that as a one-off deduction, the valuation still is quite favourable. We actually ended up with a ad recommendation on the stock.
Why haven't we seen any civil claims yet?
I presume that there's quite a lot of detailed work to go into, and I presume that there could be negotiations going on. I would imagine it'll be a lot easier to settle than to go into actual litigation.
Have you spoken to any directors? Are they?
Well, we've given up trying because for good reasons they can't. There's not very much they can say. All they will say in one case is that they've had notification of potential claims, and others, they say that most of them say they haven't received any claims as yet. But about 6 months ago, there was quite a big noise from clients, mainly public sector clients, that they were jolly well going to claim, but that seems to have gone quiet.
Well, the Stefanutti share price, I'm just looking at it now, it's hardly moved in the past year. It's been a bit turbulent, but it's back to where it was a year ago. And the company's earnings is, well, they generate, as you say, somewhere in the region of the 300 cash generated per share, 303 million rand. If there's a 300 million rand hole that could be there, why are you still thinking that the valuation is okay?
Well, we simply took their current earnings number and applied a PE to it and came out at about 1160, funnily enough. And then if you knock that once-off amount off that valuation, you get to around 10 rand, which is, it's above the current price. So there's...
Yeah, so if you then step away from it, it offers good value relative to other construction companies or relative to the market generally?
I think relative to construction companies in general, it was showing fairly reasonable value, and that calculation of ours was, we think, a worst case situation.
What about Raubex?
Raubex, the amount we mentioned was a lot less. I think it was about 38 million or something. So it was a lot less, and nothing like as significant to them as this would be to Stefanutti, if they were to be hit for that amount.
And the interesting thing was that we did see management changes at Raubex, but not at Stefanutti.
Correct.
What do you make of that?
Well, again, it's, as you say, going back a long time. I think in most cases, current managements were not couldn't have been, in most of cases, they were actually not there at the time.
Steve, you've been around a long time. Surely, from a company's perspective, it must be better to just get this out the way. If there's going to be a claim, discuss it with the potential claimants, and the uncertainties out the way, and you can then move forward. You've seen the share prices in the construction shares have really done little in the last year, maybe because of this overhang.
I think that is one of the factors. The other one is the mine. Quite a lot of the construction companies are involved in mining, and that's been a negative for the last 6 months. And the other one, of course, is the fact that the government infrastructure spending, a lot of it, for example, has gone into PRASA and Transnet, big sums there, and then specifically Eskom. And whilst the government is spending elsewhere, the companies, most of them are still complaining that they're not seeing what they expected. So you still want to see that roll out, and I think people are wondering whether the government's, where it's going to find the funds to maintain a high level of infrastructure spending. So those are some of the doubts. But look, we've got the big four have June year ends, and they'll be reporting or giving trading updates quite soon. So I think the market's going to maybe get a new lead from what they say.
What are you expecting from those trading updates?
I think they will, in general, show fairly good progress. Wilson Bailey Holmes, of course, said the other day that they're going to have to take quite a big impairment on this steel pipe operation of theirs in Mozambique. But otherwise, I think in general they will improve.
So for long-term investors, this is the time to start looking at construction shares?
I think one can single out a few. There are a few that we do like. We think Group 5, for example, covers a wide field. They're also, dare we say it, in the tolling business, but in East Europe, Zimbabwe as well as South Africa. That's quite a significant contributor to their earnings, and they cover a wide range, and they're well spread into Africa.
So that's your pick?
Yes, I think that's of the big ones, yes.
Thank you. Stephen Meintjes is the head of research at Imara S.P. Reid.